rat's nest of wiring. So I figured this is where I'd start the second video on all the wiring that I did. So this is the back left portion of the van. This is where everything is going to be run to. So that's why you've just got this cluster of stuff over here. But let me show you all the stuff I ran. So I'll start back up with the front here. So this is the first outlet, and what we've got is the AC, and then I ran a line for the DC. This is going to be where the fridge is going to sit, and I wanted to just kind of pre-wire everything just in case. So we're going to end up doing DC, but to have the option if at some point we decide to switch over to AC, made sense to do now. And you can just see a little piece of angled wood that I screwed and glued to this section and made popping that in there nice and easy. So I've got the first one up front, the second one here. This is going to be for the water pump, and possibly if we use a stovetop. And then this runs up over to here. So this is the countertop one, so it got my line for the counter. So same deal. So this is going to be for if we want to run anything on the counter, and then DC as well. And then this all runs down all the way back to the end. Now the only two that I connected, so the first one, which is going to be for the fridge, I just kept that on its own circuit. Since I didn't really envision using these two separately, I piggybacked them together. So that one runs into this high one, and then that's why you've got extra cables up here. And then the other one is going to run down, and that's where it's going to go back and connect to the box. Now I'll show you here. You can see this pipe insulation. That's where I ran all my wires through. It was cheap, it's soft, it gives, so it just seemed to make sense for driving around, having any rattling, having that all those wires protected. The one thing that I will admit that I wish I would have done differently is that if you see, or you can see right in here, this space is very narrow, and this is angled this way, so that cuts into it if I slide from this direction, and it's the same on that, and it's angled the opposite way, and it cuts coming from this direction. So I made the mistake of running that after I did all my board, and it was a long, tedious process. So I would suggest if you end up doing something similar or the same, run your wire first and then do your insulation. So I'll show you. So that's where everything ends up going, and then I ran wires up these channels. So there's two channels kind of here. So this channel is actually separate from this one. This one runs up to here. So this is where I've got power for the back ceiling. So I'm going to end up having a fan on this side, and then further down there's a wire that's running right down there, and that goes all the way over to here, which this is the first hole I had to drill through the metal. Everything else I was able to kind of squeeze through, and I may have been able to get in there, but it looked pretty sharp, so just to keep things safe. And then I did a little rig there, just put a little drop of foam insulation to help if this were to rattle, but I'll probably end up trying to figure out a way to secure that. And this runs up for the second line, which this is going to have the second fan on this side. So going back down to the channels, well, let me point out this part first. So you see all this wiring here, and it's all taped up every foot or so. This stuff is 14 gauge, and it is not sold together. So I made the mistake of running the first time I ran it through one of these channels. It got all caught up. So from then on out, I spent an annoying amount of time taping all these together before I ran them. So running over the channel and back down to the other side of the fan is what I did. And you can see I've got another outlet in the back, which same for your AC and DC. Just figured it'd be nice to have one down the road. And I'll point out what I did there is didn't really have anywhere to just kind of screw it in here. So I just got a spare piece of 2x and glued and screwed it into there to keep that secure, and it's not bad. And then wires, just like the other side, run down, and you see right now they're bare. Then I'm going to probably end up putting that pipe insulation on there too. This runs to a second outlet on this side by the door, which is the same idea, just a spare outlet. And then I've got a wire that runs up to the boxes here. So these are going to be my light switches. So I've got power that runs up to the first one, and you see in there, you can see the wire nuts. Then it comes off of there and goes back into this one. So I'm going to have power for both light switches, because I'm going to have my light switches set up for front and back. And then the first line is coming out. There'll be actually a second line that comes out, but that goes into this little doohickey, which this is the second hole that I drilled, and then that goes up to here, and you can kind of tell, maybe you can see in there, there's like a square hole I didn't have to drill, and I used more of that foam pipe insulation. And that's for my lights. I think that's it. Oh, the other tip I'll tell you is that when dealing with this rat's nest, when running your wires through your channels, I made the mistake of doing the first couple by themselves because I didn't really have a plan. I was just kind of winging it. I'd highly recommend coming up with a plan and running them all at once, because when you get them in here, there's not a lot of room. And in fact, a couple times I had to use excuse me, I had to use a string with a weight on it, and I had to kind of, well, I went from up here and I fished it down all the way to the bottom, and then ran my wire, attached it to the string, and then pulled it up. It was a pain in the butt, but if you ran all this at once, that would avoid that. And then also keep everything nice and labeled. It'll make it easier for when you go to hook everything up. Alright, I think that's it. If you have any questions or anything, just let me know.